You are now entering the horror sanctum.
Hello and welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast. I'm Jay with John, Kellen, and TJ, and we're excited to be joined this week by actor, writer, producer, director, and one half of the infamous Fogg brothers, Alan Frog himself, Mr. Jamison Newlander. Jamison, thank you so much and welcome to the Sanctum.
Thank you. Really nice to be here. I don't know. Yeah, it's nice. I appreciate that. That's a nice introduction. So it covered a bunch of stuff.
Thank you. I wrote it today. So you've been in several films, several that I love. You were in the Blob. You were in Bone Tomahawk, which one of us watched today finally due to peer pressure. But you're probably best known for the Lost Boys franchise, where you, like I said, play Alan Frog. And, you know, I know you do podcasts, conventions and all that, so I'm sure you get a ton of Lost Boys questions. Spoiler, there will be some here. But I wanted to start with your last film, 2023's Waking Nightmare, which is available on Tubi. If you're not familiar with the film, a family doctor prescribes her Ambien to help with her sleepwalking. Jordan finds her condition getting progressively worse and more dangerous. You play the dad, Jeff, in the film. My first question about that film is, have you ever taken Ambien?
You know, I probably did once or twice is my guess. Yeah, I haven't had like, I didn't sleepwalk or anything.
So this is a movie where if you watch it, you're like, okay, like I can see how people can, like, it's kind of odd. But if it's a person who has taken Ambien the incorrect way, like I have myself, it makes a ton of sense.
So you took it incorrectly. Did you have?
Yeah. So my, and this is just this is turned into the Jay show real quick, but I used to have trouble sleeping a lot. My doctor said, do you have sleep apnea? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, well, here's Ambien, you might die. And she sent me on my way, you know? So I just automatically assume, because I don't read directions, because I'm a guy and that's just how I work. I'm like, you take it, you get sleepy, you go to bed, right? That is not the case. You take it and you go straight to bed. If you don't, you wake up to paintings that you painted in the middle of the night, but you didn't own paint or canvases. So that means I got out of my house, went to Walmart and bought this shit and came home and painted.
Did that really happen?
This is true. This is a true. I have like 3 Ambien stories I can remember. One.
Can I see the paintings? I want to see the paintings.
Oh, long gone. This was years ago. This was when MySpace was the thing.
Sure.
Another instance, I woke up and I had changed my entire MySpace page to Rastafarian. Like all the colors, all the pictures. Don't remember doing that. The only one I have photo evidence, the only event that I have photo evidence of is I got to the point where it wasn't really working. So I'm like, I'm going to take 2. 30 minutes to an hour later, I got a text from my friend Kerwin, who TJ knows. I don't think anybody else knows. He's like, hey, I just got pulled over. I don't have insurance. I don't have a driver's license. Can you come get me? And I'm like, oh, shit. And I'm like, he has nobody else. He's in the back of a cop car. So I drive my ass to pick him up. We have a photo of him holding up his ticket. I'm glazed over. Like,
I think I've seen that photo.
It's on, we'll share it for this episode. It's on Facebook. Ambien is insane. So if you haven't seen Waking Nightmare, like I said, on Tubi, watch it and go into knowing that, like if you've ever done any kind of psychedelic drug or anything like that, Ambien is essentially the same thing. It has its purpose, but if you misuse it, bad news. Along with that, what was it like working with Diane Franklin for the first time? Because you guys were very active. It seemed like around the same time frame, but you never hit a movie together until this one.
Yeah, exactly. I first of all, working with Diane was amazing. Partly for the same reason that like working with Corey Haim was amazing. You know, that's like someone who I loved and respected, you know, who I really wanted to work with. And I didn't really know her in the 80s. I think she probably was a little bit, I think she's maybe a couple years older, maybe, or maybe I'm a couple years older, I should say. Maybe, I don't know. But, and so we just kind of didn't do any movies together at the same time, you know, but it was like, working with her I find this with a lot of people that I respect, that it's really an amazing experience. It's so giving. It's like what it's meant to be, what we got into this for. because it's that amazing feeling, that connection that you have. And we had a really nice connection. When you play husband and wife, it's like, you got to love each other a little bit, so I think we both came away. I'm noticing in our communication since then that I think we both came away like loving each other a little bit, just in there a little bit.
Yeah, that's always fun. Now, was this a film that you had to audition for? I think you did another film with the director, right?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, Brian Farmer approached me for this movie because he's been working his way up, on the horror side. He had a couple of other movies and I worked on with him, and he came to me with this script, and it was great. I thought it was great from the beginning, and he's such a talented dude. This guy, Brian is like, he just kind of he knocked it out. He had a vision for it. He knocked it out in like a weekend or something like that. I mean, it's like when stuff like that, it's brewing for a long time, I'm sure, and so I really loved it. And then he told me that Diane Franklin was in it, and I was like, oh, this is great. This is really exciting, But we sat, it sat on it in post production for a long time. It was one of those where it was like they ran into some trouble. It wasn't exactly the final product. This often happens. You guys filmmakers, I mean, it's like, it's not exactly what the script was. It's like there were some kind of like curveballs that went on toward the end of production that I think made it like, okay, it took a little while for them to find like, what is the movie here? What movie do we have here? And I thought it was really exciting, finally when they put it together, because they found some threads that just were there that they were able to pull out. I just thought it was really, really well done. And I also think Diane, especially a couple of scenes, I just think just blew it out of the water. I thought she was amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
Shelley also, I think Shelley's a very talented actress.
Yeah, she was. And it was a movie that I didn't go into with any expectations, because like I said, I'd never heard of it. I just, preparing for you, did a little research. I'm like, oh, it's on Tubi, I'll check this out. And I really enjoyed it. And again, I can relate to it. That helped a lot.
Totally,
but it is well done. It's well acted. Definitely check that out on Tubi.
I appreciate that. I'm glad you say that, because I really think it's good. I'd love to push it. I'd love to get it out there more. You know what I mean?
Yeah, hopefully it will. So we'll move on from that. In your emails we had back and forth, you had mentioned your Santa Cruz Lost Boys YouTube show.
Yeah.
Which sounds absolutely amazing. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so like this was just last year. God, this has all happened so kind of quickly, that last year I was like, why am I not going up to Santa Cruz? It's right there. It's not like it's easy to get to. It's still a flight or like a 5-hour drive, at best, but it's like, I was like, why don't I go up there and just kind of see what's up, and maybe I'll do a little show about it. I'm not sure. I went up, I met with Joe, who's the owner of the comic book store that he was the owner of the comic book store from the movie. And then that was destroyed. That's what the third episode is about, actually, of the YouTube show, is that the earthquake of '89, I think, destroyed the comic book store. And so they raised it, they leveled it, and they moved it. So, he's the new owner. So anyway, I talked to him, and he was like, yeah, do a signing. Nobody from the movie's ever done a signing up here. So I did it. And then, I just kind of, these days it's like I have an iPhone and a little mic and, somebody to hold it, and, just kind of like, and then all of a sudden we had a little show, and it was like, oh, cool. And then, and then I was playing around with stuff, and I was like, I went up to Grandpa's house. That was the first show, is Grandpa's house, the Pogonip, and I was like, I started playing around with things. I was like, so let's go check it out, like as if it's like some, if it's like a show, like a one
Did
of
you
those.
do this motion like this, like wave your arm, like, come on, guys, let's go check it out.
Yeah, I got to do that. I don't know if I even specifically did that, but so it's like, having some fun doing that kind of stuff. And then, so then I put together an episode. It was like, okay, that's cool. And then, then a friend of mine, Will Fredericks, who's my producing partner on it, I realized is, he's a big fan, and he knew all the locations. And I was like, hey, I'm headed up again, Santa Cruz. Want to do another one of these shows? Do you want to come help me? And so I didn't even realize I was tapping this kind of gold mine of like, so So I've been up to a bunch of the locations. The first show was about Grandpa's house, the Pogonip, which is like you can't even go inside. It's like if you go inside, someone went inside, they had to be rescued. I don't even know why, but like I'm trying to figure out why they'd have to be rescued, but maybe they fell through the floor or something like that. Is my imagination runs wild, but so it's like you can't get in there, but it looks the same, from the outside, which is pretty cool. And then so it's neat. I'm there. I tell stories about what it was like, what memories come up. I even get a little emotional in the second episode. I got a little emotional about being in Santa Cruz, being back up in Santa Cruz and everything. So, and then I also put on. There's a local artist who had made all the jackets of the Lost Boys, like duplicated all the jackets. So I put each one on and walked on the carousel as each one, just doing fun stuff like that, and bringing the cast in little by little as I convinced them to do it with me. I got the Frog Dad, the starting there with like behind me and Feldman in the comic book store are our parents. So it's like nobody really knew where they were, that kind of showed up at this audition. Hippies, local hippies. I mean, kind of. And so we tracked him down and we have him on the show, So that kind of stuff. It's really fun. I encourage you guys to check it out, and your audience, of course. It's on my YouTube channel. I mean, for some reason, my YouTube channel is Jamison 611, and I could probably change it, and maybe I will add another one. But now it's sort of like maybe I'll play around with like get the 611 from Jameson.
So you've been in several horror movies in your career.
Yeah.
The Lost Boys trilogy, 1988's The Blob, Sky Harbor, Bone Tomahawk, like Jay mentioned earlier, more of a thriller, but Walking Nightmare. Do you find yourself drawn to these horror roles? Are you interested in doing horror roles, or has that just kind of been a coincidence in your career?
What's interesting is that I was never a horror, audience member, because I really get too scared, or at least I did when I was younger. I could not understand why people wanted to go to horror movies. I would just get so freaked out. It was kind of like certain roller coasters, like you get on this roller coaster and you're like, why did I do this? Why am I on this? But then as a thrill, so I've learned to appreciate the thrill, but I'm not naturally a horror guy. I think it just kind of happened. I mean, Lost Boys, Lost Boys isn't really a traditional horror movie per se. It's like it almost kind of, not pokes fun at, but it almost like like it's like a perfect example. No, perfect example. Like like what Tarantino was doing with Pulp Fiction. It's like Lost Boys was almost like a recreation of that kind of genre film. Am I right about that, or am I making that up? That it almost was
I
like
can see that. Yeah.
That sounds right. It kind of becomes
a different take on the
quintessential
vampire genre.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and so it's like, I forget where I was going with that, but
I get sidetracked all the time with that. I blame my ADD.
Like off on some tangent, and we're like, I just can't find it.
Squirrel.
So, like Jay mentioned earlier, I'm the one who didn't watch Bone Tomahawk until this week. It had always been on my list, but I just couldn't find it streaming anywhere. Finally found it streaming, so watched it. Fantastic film. But when you read that script, do you realize how brutal that movie is going to be, or is it not until you actually see the scenes being recorded where you're like, oh wow, this is a lot?
Yeah, that's how it was for me. I mean, because you don't know how far they're going to go. Are they really going to show it, this or that? And I mean and also I'm not great at reading stuff and being able to picture it. Like, being like, oh yeah, this is what they're going to do with it, and it's cool. And also Craig Zoller. This is his bust out movie, or his debut movie. Really, he was writing a bunch of scripts. He was really talented writer, and he sold a bunch of scripts, and then he was like, you know what, we're gonna make a movie. We're gonna actually make a movie. It's like those classic stories of like scripts go into development and then you never make movies. And he wanted to make movies. Craig was a just like lived and breathed film, from when I knew him in New York. And so it's not surprising that he came up with something that was like, just like, wow, amazing. And right out of the gate too, And then we were right up against Hateful Eight, because it was it was like Kurt Russell. It was the same editor as well. Fred Raskin edited both of those movies, Bone Tomahawk and Hateful Eight. So, and people were really we really came out. I don't know about on top, because that's Tarantino and he's amazing, but I think we held our own against the Hateful Eight with like a one tiny piece of the budget. It was a really low budget movie.
I think Bone Tomahawk's better. I would say it's better.
I was going to
Yeah.
say it's definitely an easier watch. Hateful Eight's fantastic, but it's classic Tarantino where it's a little drawn out.
That's a great double feature, though.
Yeah,
That's right. Actually, that's a great idea.
And Hateful Eight's mostly one location too, whereas Bone Tomahawk's like a journey film.
Yeah, it's funny. I heard Craig talk about it, and maybe it was at the premiere, and he was like a Western. They have Westerns that take place in the same. I mean, he wasn't trying to take a knock at Hateful Eight, I'm sure, but he was like, they have things that are called Westerns, but they take place in one location. He's like, to me, that's not a Western. To me, a Western has to have that, that movement, which I think is a decent point. And, I'm inclined to take Craig's, he's probably seen every Western out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the dialogue in that was really well done. I thought, as far as just the way they talk, felt like it was the way people would have talked back then. So yeah, just a real enjoyable film, and the cinematography is great as well. Speaking of Kurt, you've worked with Kurt Russell, Kiefer Sutherland, Corey Feldman, Alex Winter, Patrick Wilson, David Arquette, just to name a few of the big names. Is there anybody that stands out where you were kind of in awe of them watching their process, or you took things away from watching them, or anybody where you're just like, I absolutely want to work with that guy again?
Yeah, well, so there's a lot of people in a lot of ways. I mean, I mean, maybe because we were talking about Bone Tomahawk, I was really impressed with Matthew Fox. It just, we all were, the day we were on set in the saloon there, he was very much a part of it and part of the sort of the crowd that was there, but at the same time, he had a much more serious role and everything. And then to see him in the movie, I was like, that's really impressive to see that. And I sometimes don't think of Matthew Fox, or at least at the time. I guess this was after Lost, wasn't it? I can't remember.
Yeah, a couple of years after.
Yeah,
Lost was a phenomenon, and I think that may be one of those actors' curses where every time I see him, I immediately think of Lost.
Yeah,
but he was
totally
fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, totally. I agree. And so, I mean, that's just off the top of my head. I would say that there's a lot of people I want to work with again. I want to work with Diane Franklin again. We're, I don't know, when I say looking for projects, it's not like we're like our agents are like conspiring or anything, but we've talked about wanting to do another thing together. And I was really impressed with Jason Patrick. He watching him on Lost Boys, and not just how he was, because the trick with that movie is that he was very clear about not wanting to make a vampire movie, flying around with teeth and kind of thing. And he kept that movie grounded, I think, and not only for him but also for Haim as well. I've been talking to him a little bit recently about how Haim is really talented, but he was a bit all over the place, and that kind of brother relationship, just that was really impressive, watching that.
So Lost Boys, to piggyback on that, Lost Boys was such a seminal film for all of us millennials, of all of which of us on the show would probably fall somewhere in that category. It's just a movie you grow up watching. So the whole deal. It is one of the seminal 80s movies too, not just 80s horror films, and great cast, great story. Joel Schumacher, such a very original director. Tell us a little bit about working with him and what it was like, maybe even auditioning to get, because this was your first film role, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had gotten other roles that were film or a bit of TV. I did like a commercial and some TV, and I had not done a feature film. I had done like a TV movie and stuff. Yeah. So first of all, it's interesting. I was just talking about this because Joel was amazing in a lot of ways. He was so fun. He was like he instilled fun into everything. Now he also he could get really he was a screamer also. Like if he was upset about something, or if something was off track, these directors, especially at that time, he was busting out. He hadn't proved himself yet, a little bit with St. Elmo's Fire and stuff. But he was really, it was on the line for him, and he really put it on the line. And so, you didn't want him to be mad at you. It was really a bad feeling. And he rarely was mad at me. If he was mad at me, it was really just like collateral mad because of Feldman. Because Feldman was like maybe he was an easy target. Maybe he was a little slow getting into wardrobe sometimes. But I've talked to him in adult life, and he said like he had all these pieces to his costume, and he was always getting all these pieces on, and then Joel would be like, Corey Feldman, get your ass in here. So there was that side of Joel. But I think we all really loved Joel as a kind of a sort of a father figure at the time. I mean, he was really guiding us, kind of like an uncle in a way, like a really important uncle, and he, because there's a story that in probably the next episode of my show on YouTube, the James, Lost Locations show, we're doing it on Tim Capello, sax guy, and he tells this story about how when he met Joel, he was auditioning. He was in Warner Brothers auditioning for something else, and Joel calls him into. He gets someone to like take him to his office, and he's like, Tim, do you have a phone? Do you have an agent? Are you in this business? And like because he was trying to get in touch with him, but it's a good example of how he was sort of annoyed in a way, but he was being funny about it. He was just a lot of fun. And I definitely credit Joel with making the movie what it was, having the vision and then having the ability to keep us all not just on track of his vision, but growing his vision, like nurturing us all that in ways that would grow his vision, so.
I actually wrote a note down while Kellen was speaking because I had assumed that he was going to mention Tim Capello in his questions, but he didn't. We've seen him live twice.
Yeah, he's
John
great, right?
saw him he is fantastic, and he's so kind, and he'll stand there with you until 3 a.m. in the morning, taking pictures and hugging you. Have you seen him any shows like live recently?
Yeah, I saw him down in San Diego at the Till 2 Club. It's just on his tour. Like he's been touring the country, right? He does this.
Yeah.
Where are you guys?
We're in Nashville.
Yeah. So he he's, I'm sure, right. He goes to Nashville. He goes to that area, and he so I saw him in San Diego, and that's
Did you participate in the dance?
Was there a specific dance that
he does?
That's right. Of Jamie.
Yeah. That was one of the funnest shows I've ever been to. So anyway, sorry, TJ. Continue.
No worries. I know that there's a lot of Tim Capello love to go around on the show. Yeah. So I'd be surprised if someone didn't say something. But yeah. So speaking of, you're talking about wardrobe and whatnot. How much freedom did you have with like all the military fatigues and like the cut off muscle shirts? I think you wore a beret for a good bit of time. Right, like, was that all Joel Schumacher's idea, or were you given some freedom with wardrobe?
I think that the vibe Joel had was that all ideas are welcome. Bring us, talk about your ideas, talk to the wardrobe about your ideas, talk to special effects about your ideas, And I don't know if they were really serious about that. I think they were. I brought up some ideas that I think that they're just not interested in, but they were nice about it, But like the military stuff, I think it was something that they were sort of trying to go for potentially. And so they brought it up. They said that in the description of the characters for the audition. And then I wore military stuff. Actually, my dad had like 3 different military jackets that I just at some point I just thought it was kind of tough and kind of, for me to wear those jackets. And so I was used to kind of wearing those jackets, and then I wore it for the audition, the one with the dice on the sleeve, that they had in the movie. They recreated that based on that was my dad's army fatigue jacket. So in that sense, I had a big influence, in that sense, which was cool. And the beret thing, I think I might have asked for a beret, to tell you the truth,
Okay.
because I thought berets were cool. But then at some point in the middle of it, I was like, oh no, did I screw myself? I have this beret on, like, you know what I mean? Like, should I be without a beret so that I could be more of a movie star or whatever? And so I brought it up and they were like, I mean, there's a bit of the movie I don't have a beret, a bunch of that I don't have a beret anyway in the comic book store. But then it's like once we get to the fighting and stuff, they were like, it'll be good for the audience to be able to be like, that's the one with the beret, that's the one with the red headband, whatever.
Yeah, it's part of your combat gear, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the combat. Yeah.
So what was it like working? Because you were like right there in the middle of the two Coreys at kind of the height of their fandom and fame. Was there a lot of craziness surrounding that? Do you have any stories from that era of time of what it was like to be hanging out with those guys?
Yeah. So the thing with me, really party. I was talking about this recently on another podcast, like, and I'm kind of piecing it together in adult life. Like, it wasn't really until even maybe after college that I really began to understand the idea of going out and having a good time and kind of bonding with people and stuff like that. And so I didn't really do that much and that well, so I didn't really get caught up in that. And I also then I went off to college not too long after Lost Boys. So, I just didn't see that much of the craziness, the true craziness of the two Coreys. Now, I will say that I was there at the beginning of the two Coreys. I was there, within a month of them meeting for the first time. And then that summer, or the summer of '86, when we were doing the movie, and then, a bunch of the time after that, but especially that summer, it was like the three of us, we were hanging out, and so it was like the two Coreys, that was just beginning, that was like the like germ, beginning of the two Coreys. So I have that going for me. I wasn't there for the true craziness, which maybe was good, but
Probably
I was
so.
there for the beginning. Yeah,
So I have a question. So and looking kind of into your filmography, it looks like you did Lost Boys, and you had a role in The Blob, which was one of the great horror remakes of all
I
time.
agree. Thank you. I agree.
Special effects, everything, acting, great film. But then it looks like you took off like 15 years and then directed a film called Rooster, which looks to be a comedy. Is that available anywhere? I could not find it to stream.
Is that right? I got to make it more available. It's on my YouTube channel, and it's if you go to my YouTube channel, or if you go to Rooster Newlander, if you Google Rooster Newlander, you should be able to find it. It's in two parts, and it's a cute little movie. Actually, Craig Zoller, who directed Bone Tomahawk, did the cinematography on it.
Oh, very cool.
He was a DP, in New York.
So what were you doing for those kind of, I guess, going to college, figuring out life? What were you doing for that gap of time, and what brought you back to filmmaking?
Yeah, so I was doing theater, basically.
Okay.
I had this idea that that after Lost Boys, it's like you never know what to do exactly. You don't know exactly how to play it. And I didn't exactly have great advisors because I wasn't an industry kid per se. Like, I didn't have family in the industry. I didn't, and so I thought it was this cool idea that I would do Lost Boys and then I would go to New York and I would be a New York stage actor, but I would have the film thing going on still. It didn't exactly work out that way. Like, the way it worked out is that I went to New York and I did theater, and that was great, but I was building up a theater career, and the film career is a whole different thing. People don't care about theater. Theater people don't care about film. I mean, that's not true. They do care about film, but I mean, you know what I mean? They're two different worlds. And so really what I did is I killed that film career. And so all through my 20s, I was in New York and I was doing theater, and it was amazing. It was an amazing time. It's the 90s in New York. And so basically the entire 90s I was in New York doing theater and being an artist, and it was an amazing time. But it didn't do great for my career. And so I decided in 2000, I met my wife in New York, and we both decided.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. We both in Hoboken, of all places, Hoboken, New Jersey. And so we both decided to move out to LA. We were both trying to be actors and whatever. And I was like, let's do it. Let me finally, begin to rebuild it. And so one of the things to do to rebuild it was to do this film, because I didn't have any current roles. I had, none of my theater roles translate. It's like I have some cool pictures. If you go to my website, jamisonnewlander.com, you can kind of see a bunch of pictures from my theater career, which might help kind of fill in the blanks a little bit. And then so then I came back to film, but it still wasn't, it takes time. It was building like a whole new career again. And so I like little by little was doing stuff like getting roles here, like clawing my way back, and then I started doing conventions in like 2005. And that was good, but still like moving along. But then there was Lost Boys, the Tribe, which I, ended up having that. It went to the special features, which was good actually, because it was, I don't know if you saw it, that one. It's a little nuts, the long hair, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then then the Thirst, and it was like beginning to build it back, beginning like, okay, cool. Now I'm not just like an actor who had a role, who had some roles as a teenager. I have some current roles, and then that led to, I have a role in like the Two Coreys movie, the Two Coreys TV movie, and the and then Bone Tomahawk and Waking Nightmare. And I just did a gig last year that was like, it's not a horror film. It was more of like a feel good movie. It'll be out in a few months. Called Mr. Manhattan. Just another role. I play a lawyer. So it's like just kind of building it up again. It's like that poem If, by Rudyard Kipling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it'll make me emotional to think about it, because it's a really cool poem. But he's like, if you can watch the things that you gave your life to broken, and then you stoop and build them up again, with whatever tools you have, it's like that's one of the things about life that you got to do sometimes, so
Yeah.
that's
And
where we are.
always in the process of rebuilding something.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So I wanted to comment. I really love your artwork over there.
Oh, thanks. This the Lost Boys thing.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me. So when you were filming The Lost Boys, something I've always wondered. Recently, I know this is an odd thing to say, but I've been watching Gilmore Girls again, and I know on a horror podcast bringing that up. But Edward Herman is in there. He's the
Oh, that's
grandfather,
right.
right? So every time I watch it, I'm just laughing because I keep thinking of Max, right? I'm like, this is so, and my wife's not into horror, so I had this vision in my head. So when you're on set and, I know that sometimes you're not in certain scenes, you might not be there when they're filming something, but like, for instance, like at the end when Max does the big reveal and he's like, I still want you, Lucy. And then like in the middle where David takes his crew out and they really kind of abduct Michael and they kill the bikers. When you saw that makeup for the first time, was that very creepy, or was it kind of one of those things where you're buddies and you're just kind of like, it doesn't really affect you seeing them like that?
Yeah, it didn't scare me. I mean, it didn't scare me, but it did. When I saw it, I was like, whoa, like, because it's like it took their faces and then it just like they all like their faces like bulged out, it's like these things. But like I watched the process of it happening. I was in makeup and I would look over and they have this this like latex thing that they put on, and then they put it, they attach it, and then and it's like I know what it is. It's hard to I don't think I ever was scared, looking at that kind of stuff. Maybe the eyes, the contacts were pretty freaky actually, because that was all new. Like you could change someone's eyes, that was trippy. But also like for the where they like revealed themselves and had Michael, with Michael and everything like that, I wasn't anywhere around that. Like they did all that probably like in the middle of the night, some weeknight, and we were mostly shooting on weekends at a comic book store in Santa Cruz. And so,
Okay.
it's like those were location shots. All the location stuff was done in Santa Cruz. Most of it was in Santa Cruz, in a couple other spots. But then all the inside stuff was done in Burbank at on the studio. Like even they rebuilt the grandpa's house in Burbank on at Burbank Studios. And so all the interior stuff, because then you can pull out a wall and you can, bring the camera in from above and all that sort of thing, So, but I was there for Max's reveal. He was like nervous about this monologue. The monologue, I think he didn't quite realize they were doing it that day. That was my impression of what happened. He was like, "Oh, okay, we're doing that." It's like that. And then he came back and he was like, I don't know. He just nailed it. I was like, this is a pro, And then also when he did that thing with his tongue, when he's like, I still want you, Lucy. And then he like goes, I thought he forgot his line, and that actually he might have, that could be, that stuff happens, that it's like, sometimes you forget your line and you just do something and then that ends up, so.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, especially when you're friends like that, it's not the same. I mean, I remember seeing that the first time as a kid, and I'm just like, like you said, the eyes, that's the craziest thing.
Right.
So, I am a fan of the sequels. I like the Tribe. I like the Thirst. I would say that I like the Thirst a little more. I feel like it's more of like a fun kind of, and you're in it more. It's just a fun story. What was that like? For years and years, people talked about sequels. Did Joel ever get close to doing one, or was it always just kind of like the script has to be right? It's not there.
I don't know how close they ever got. I know from the very beginning, or not too long after it, I remember having a meeting with him at the Ivy. I don't know if you've heard of the Ivy. It was like a big industry place, that people would go. And so I had like lunch with him at the Ivy. Did I say dinner? I meant lunch. I had lunch with him at the Ivy, and it was just very like Hollywood kind of a thing, and I was like, wow, I'm really on my way here. Like they're talking about a sequel. They were like the Frog Brothers. He was like, we're going to bring back the frogs and we're going to bring back Corey Haim and, and it's going to be, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. And then I didn't hear anything about it, for like 15 years, and then, I mean, at different times I tried to get a sequel going, but so, I mean, what was the question? That it's like, what was it like waiting for a sequel or wanting there to be
Yeah, because it
Yeah.
seems like it would just be so obvious to do a sequel so fast, but I know sometimes, you don't want to mess up what was so great. So I don't know how
Right.
Joel was. I mean, I imagine he seems like a great artist. Like he might not have wanted to go there,
Yeah, I think that the thing about Lost Boys, I heard this is what I heard, and I think it's probably true, or at least there's some truth to it, that like that Schumacher owned a piece of it, Donner owned a piece of it, and Warner Brothers owned a piece of it, and so it was hard to get everybody to agree. You know, um, I mean, I'm not sure why exactly. I mean, things got. I mean, then also like the Coreys were big, and then they crashed, and then I don't know, and so I'm still trying. I'm still working on trying to get a Frog Brothers show together, actually, um, which would be really cool. I think in a good kind of way of, it would be like, if Cobra Kai, what I mean, they did that, and it's like it's not exactly Karate Kid. It's something slightly different. I think we can do that, something slightly different, but still honor the franchise. That would be really cool if we could do that.
Yeah, you guys
Almost
could
like
take
they're
out
kinda-
vampires everywhere.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
Kind of like what the Ghostbusters have done. Like they still had those key elements from the original, and then they're introducing these new characters.
Yeah, exactly. We could have a school, a vampire hunting school, or whatever.
So those guys would totally do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that Hollywood is a weird place. I mean, it's not like I'm like Mr. knowing what's going on in Hollywood. I don't know. There's very few people who really, I think, probably think they do know what's going on in Hollywood, but I'm certainly not one of them. But it's hard because something like that has to have momentum,
Right.
even though it's like, it seems like a no-brainer. It's like, it still needs momentum. People excited about it, excited about that specific version of it, so that's what we're working on, trying to put that together.
So one thing I was curious about too with the Tribe and the Thirst, watching them, I've seen them both a few times, and I don't. It feels like when I'm watching them, the Thirst would seem like just watching it and the performances. It would seem like that probably was a funner time. Like that was more of a memorable set. The Tribe, I don't know. I feel like you didn't have a bigger part. I know you were in a deleted scene in that, and I'm sure that probably. I don't know. I just in my mind that seems like that probably wasn't as fun. Would you say that's true, or was it the opposite?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that's part of the problem that they didn't quite see with the sequel is that I think, with the sequel, with the Tribe, somehow someone made the decision, guess what? We don't need to have the original cast in it. We'll just do it this way, which I don't think was the right choice. And yes, it was cheaper. They didn't have to pay for the people who's originated those roles, and they did it for really cheap. And they made a bunch on it because it was a good market for them. The DVD market it was like before the red box. It was like DVDs were renting for a lot and stuff. So they made some good money on it. But at the same time, I think they missed that kind of fun that you're talking about. That we did get back a little bit with the Thirst. We got it back a little bit because the Frog Brothers were together. It was like you got a little bit of that, like, oh yeah, this, and then now, oh cool, it's turned into this. Even if it's like it's not quite as good as the first movie, right? It's like the first movie is this amazing, like, coming together of all these artists, this moment in time, lightning in a bottle, whatever. It's like this is a follow-up story, enjoyable, really enjoy it. Different kind of, yeah, you get some of that fun back, and I think they shortchanged it with the first sequel, and I think they were trying. Well, they ended up coming at it late. Like Feldman was really just supposed to be a cameo, and in the Tribe, and he really was like, look, you can't just do that. He really kind of worked his way back in, and in my opinion, was really the best part of that movie. Certainly for Lost Boys fans. The other performers, wonderful work. I think they should be commended stepping into these roles and doing a good job and everything. But it's not the original franchise. That's what people wanted, and so I don't know. That's my feeling about it.
We mentioned Tim. Have you seen Feldman live?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, there's a bunch of times I've seen. I sort of like. I bet I've seen him live 10 times.
Oh, nice. We've only seen him once, but it was so much fun, like from start to finish. Like, he is a showman for sure.
Exactly. I love his end. Exactly. He's a real showman. Yeah.
So we're gonna wind things down. I do have a quick question, and this is nothing to do with you, but have you seen a movie called Hawk and Rev Vampire Slayers?
No.
So it's directed by Ryan Barton Grimley. Let me see what year it was from. 2021. So it is 100% influenced from Lost Boys. So you should check it out. I think it's on YouTube. It used to be on Tubi. I don't remember how I found them. I think it was on Instagram. And they're like, we'll send you a link to the movie. We'll send you some stickers. I'm like, yeah, I'll watch it. It was a lot of fun, but it's heavily influenced.
Oh, I've got to see
love
it.
Lost Boys. So yeah, check Hawk and Rev Vampire Slayers. It's a lot of fun.
I've heard of that one.
You've heard of it?
I heard it from me.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Probably for me.
I feel like it rings a bell somehow that there was something like this. Like, I got to check it out because I got to, like, if it's awesome, I got to tell them that.
Yeah, it's fun. Like the best part is they have like surprise steak. Like he just has steaks hidden everywhere, like on his person and in the houses, But yeah, check it out. All right. So that's going to be it for this week's episode. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to wherever you're listening to this podcast. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and join our group over on Facebook as well. And come back next week when we are going to have a chat about the most talked about horror movie of 2024 so far, Late Night with the Devil. We got a screener of that, but we decided to wait a month before we spoiled it for everyone. So come back next week for that. Jamison, thank you again for joining us. This was a lot of fun. You want to take a second, tell everyone what you have coming up, your YouTube handle again, and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, totally. So check out my YouTube show. It's called Jamison Newlander's Lost Locations, Searching for the Lost Boys. There's 3 episodes up. It's on my YouTube channel, which is Jamison611. You can also find it on my website. If you go to my website, jamisonnewlander.com, there's a tab called Jamison TV, and I have those, and actually Rooster's on that as well. Okay. So check that out. I have a movie coming out. It's not a big part, but I play a lawyer in this movie, Mr. Manhattan, It'll be out in a couple of months. And I'm going to a convention in the UK at Newcastle in a couple of weeks, and also be at New Jersey HorrorCon in 3 weeks at 19th through 21st of April. So
nice. All right, go check that out. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. Show him some love. We would appreciate it. And all right, signing off. I'm Jay with John, Kellen, TJ, and Mr. Jamison Newlander. And until next time,
keep it spooky. Also, Hawk and Rev Vampire Slayers is apparently available on Amazon Prime and the Roku channel now. If anyone's honest.
Okay, I do have to ask one thing before you go, because I meant to ask it. When you're reading the Lost Boys script, or maybe you didn't know this in the end, when Grandpa knows everything and finds out, when you see that or read that, are you just kind of like, what the fuck? He knew the whole time?
Yeah, I think they were looking for an ending, and I think it worked out fine. It's like, it's just quirky and bizarre enough that it worked, I think. But it was a bit of it, like, when you're writing a paper in school, and then you're like, you know what? I think it's done.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit like that, but I think we got lucky, because I think it's a cool ending.
The one thing I never could get used to is all the damn vampire.
Right. It's like it ties it all up together in this cool way, and then you're like, wow, he knows about it. What does that mean? And so
every time I hear somebody say the whole time, I always think of Sally Field in Mrs. Doubtfire. The whole time.